Welcome to the Creepin' It Real Show, your one-stop shop for weird news, movie reviews, otherworldly, and paranormal shenanigans. We'll take a dive into what's going on in creepy pop culture. You can follow Creepin' It Real Show on Twitter at creepin_it. You can email us at creepinitrealshow@gmail.com. And you can also go to our website, creepinitshow.com. Welcome to Creepin' It Real. I'm one of your hosts, Yardley. And today for episode, 36, we are going to do our Hereditary spoiler review. But before we dive into this movie that, at least for me, I thought hit all the marks, I'm going to bring in my co-host from the great state of California. How you doing, Moni?
I'm well, although it sounds like we're headed into an argument over this film today. So getting ready for that. But last night I actually watched, we were talking the other day, last week, about Netflix originals, and I watched the adaptation of Gerald's Game, the Stephen King book. Mm-hmm. And it's on Netflix right now, and that was actually pretty well done. So if you want an actually good horror movie, check that out on Netflix, Gerald's Game.
Okay, awesome. Definitely, I'll definitely check that out. And what's going on up the street, Christy?
Hey, not much. Happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there. I made some breakfast for my dude and some good coffee. And I'm just going to go on the record and say that this movie was a fucking masterpiece. I was blown away. I've never gone home and dreamed about a movie before, and I did. It fucked with me on every level, and I'm like, that's what I look for. I don't want slasher. I don't want bullshit. I want that really messed up, stays with you, makes you think, what the hell did I just watch? That was it for me, man. I'm so excited to talk about this movie. I can't wait.
Shots fired. I'm going to get ready to stand alone over here, all right?
You're totally going to be standing alone, but here's the thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're going to have points that are going to be legit, and I look forward to hearing what they are. So what I want to do first, unless y'all had any weird news, or does this movie get our full attention today?
I don't have any weird news. I do want to ask just everybody to heads up. We're going to be doing a giveaway on next show, so just look for that next week. I have to do a real quick humble brag. I couldn't get the cups that I wanted that were the engraved. They were way too expensive. And so I just kind of forgot about it and was like, oh, well, that's just not going to happen. Well, my husband reached out to a bunch of people that he knows who know other people, and ended up just didn't even ask me, just ordered the cups I wanted and got them decaled for less than half the price I was going to have to pay. And so he's awesome. I appreciate him doing that, and total surprise, got them in, and they were sitting on the counter, and it was just a really nice gesture. So we're getting these wine tumblers that are copper, and they have our logo on them. And everybody,
we posted them on social media, all over our social medias. They look awesome, Christy.
If you want to take a look at them, they're on Facebook and Twitter. But they are we all are going to get one, and then we're giving away 3. So we'll announce that official, rules to the giveaway next week, and that's it. So so shout out to him. That was really awesome of him to do.
Thanks to you and your dude for thinking to do that. That was awesome.
He does shit like that all the time. He is very, very good in that department. He'll just, if I make a weird comment like, man, I was at my friend's house and I smelled this cherry soap. It smells amazing. 2 days later, I have a box full of it just on the doorstep. He just goes and gets stuff. So he's awesome that way, and I had to really give him some kudos because that was a huge, awesome surprise. I'm supposed to be buying him shit. It's Father's Day. So anyway, we can get into the fucked upness of this movie. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I'm glad you acknowledged that, because I was going to remind your ass of that at the end of that spiel you went on. You need to hook him up. Thank you very much.
Exactly. Oh, don't worry. He gets very well taken care of.
But you know what? But that's what's up. And you know what? Before we dive in, I'm just gonna essentially, I think what would be cool to do this day, we don't necessarily have to just chronologically go through the movie, because it's, it was actually if I'm 2.5 hours or close to that movie. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a basic overview of what it was about, from beginning to the end, and then we'll dive into some of our moments. Now, I know if people have been online and they've looked at, the reviews for this or the non-spoiler reviews, IMDb, it was a 7.9 out of 10 the last time I checked there. Rotten Tomatoes has it 92% fresh with 188 fresh reviews, 17 rotten. It got a D plus from CinemaScore.
Clearly, those are my people.
And CinemaScore, and I think that these are people, I think for the most part, of course, this is the people who are coming out of the theater, but they also kind of go into that score where I think a lot of people, for some reason, were upset with the ending of the movie. I guess that's kind of what made some people say, I wasn't, they either didn't know what the ending fully meant, or they just, they didn't like it for whatever reason. For me, I didn't have a problem with the ending because actually they told you exactly what the fuck was going on if you kind of paid attention to the signs and the things that they kind of had in the movie. And some of that was validated, of course, after I saw the movie, because it's a grind, and sometimes I try to sit back and enjoy it instead of trying to, I got to make a note about this. So anyway, we'll get into that. So let's talk about the characters. We'll talk about what we thought about them, and our perception on did each character kind of get their due, and what they did in the movie, did it really work within the story that they had. So we had the character of Annie Graham, who was played by Toni Collette. I thought she knocked it out of the park. A lot of people, you might have known her from Sixth Sense, and she was also in Shaft. She's had other projects, but those are two that stick out for me. Are there any other projects from Toni Collette that either of you?
The first time I ever saw her was Muriel's Wedding, and that's an Australian movie from 25 years ago, probably. And she was just a young thing. She was a kid, and I just loved her there because she played such a goofy, kind of crazy, bubbly, crazy nut girl, and she's just phenomenal. And this movie, I know Moni will disagree, and I think we're all three gonna probably hit on the main kind of feelings of people. Either you really love it or you really hate it. But
her acting is amazing, though.
She did
Toni
fucking
Collette's
amazing.
A joy to watch.
I mean, her breakdown just. At the table when she stood up and she was screaming at Peter, and then the other when she finds the body and her just her husband's holding her, and just every single scene she was in was like, she did what she was supposed to do. That's for sure. I was blown away. I mean, I knew she was a good actress, but holy shit, she was phenomenal in this movie. Phenomenal.
The last thing that I enjoyed her in was the Krampus movie, which is a really fun horror film. Maybe we should visit around Christmas time this year. But I felt like a lot of her character was like if the character from the Krampus went through the stuff that the character from Hereditary goes through, then it would be the same. So that was the only thing that was a little bit like, she's always a really good actress, but I was like, I just saw her play this mom that's like losing her shit. So anyway.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, then there's a character, Charlie Graham, who was the daughter of Annie, who's played by Millie Shapiro. For those who, if you've seen the movie, you know who she is, but in the trailer, she's the young lady who is clicking throughout the trailer. Her resume is pretty much this movie. She doesn't really have any other thing. So this from here.
She's a Broadway star. She played, who did she play?
Matilda.
Matilda. She's supposed to be like an amazing singer, but I so cannot picture her singing because all you know her from is this show.
I can picture her clicking is what I can picture.
But exactly.
Then she did her job.
Absolutely. So, but this is pretty much as far as movies or television, this is her thing. And I thought that look, the makeup department and what they were using her for in this movie. I mean, her whole thing, especially, once things become tragic for that character, and then by the end of it, when you really realize that this young lady has pretty much been possessed by this thing the whole time. And the clicking was basically the demon that was in her. And I know I'm kind of jumping ahead because I didn't kind of close out the overall summary. Well, basically, they're trying to find a host for this demon to come back that offers, riches and all of these different things. And so this family has kind of been a so-called breeding ground for them, for the grandmother to bring back this demon. So, did any of you notice with the character of Charlie, did y'all feel like she was just, because she just seemed like a normal kid, and by watching the trailer, you think, well, man, maybe something's off about her, like she might have some type of, special needs or something like that. No, she's just a girl who we find out is possessed by the ending of it, but she was pretty normal. But there were things that bugged me in this movie about how the hell do you forget an EpiPen when you used Chekhov's gun earlier?
Well, as somebody who has a very highly asthmatic kid, we forget his inhaler all the time. So I kind of understand what that feels like. And he's actually gone into like major asthma attack because his isn't like sports, like activity triggered. It's like environment it triggered. So anyway, I can kind of understand it. That's happened to me before, but they seem to always remember it, but then don't actually like get it when it needs to when it needs to be getting. That makes no sense, but whatever.
But in the context of a movie, when you bring it up, I mean, we know that them not having it later, I guess, was a way to revisit it. But you would think that. But anyway.
Well, when they walked into the party and I saw all those walnuts being chopped, I was like, oh boy, we're screwed. Yeah, totally screwed now. But the thing with her is, I thought she was off from the beginning. I mean, she's cutting birds' heads off with scissors, and I was just like, something's wrong with her. Like, and she's kind of a creepy looking girl. I mean, she's just got these eyes that are very intense, and I was uncomfortable just looking at her from the get-go. She was just this kind of bizarre behaved, quiet, the clucking, the cutting the head off was, ugh. And so, but she was also, and then you would turn around and you'd blink and she was just a normal kid. It was almost like sometimes she was this demon and then sometimes she was just her. So it was kind of a back and forth that I kind of saw. And I didn't know at the time what was going on with her. I just saw that she was back and forth in bizarre, weird ways. That's all I can explain.
Well, Moni, I want to kind of come to you because you were saying that you were a little bit down. So, in essence, at the end of the movie, we find out that, Annie's mother, who was the person whose funeral kind of jumps off the whole, the movie. Mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty cool. Her kind of having some words talking about a mother who she didn't get along with. But at the end, when we find out that basically the cultists are essentially trying to bring back this demon, and her mother, who was titled, I think it was Queen Lee. We find out that's what the cult was calling her. She basically wants to bring back this demon, Payman. It's essentially, I think it's the demon of mischief. It offers you riches to those who summon them. But we find out that you actually have to have a male host. So that, in essence, is that something that you thought was maybe a cool thing? And had you heard about this demon? Because apparently it is a thing in real life.
Yeah, no, I had never heard about that, and I love me some demons, but I don't really study them because that's exactly why I like them. Is I like them in fiction because they're interesting to me because I don't spend a lot of time like looking into which demons are what. But they did write that backstory brilliantly, where essentially there is an older son in this family whom the grandmother at the time did not have a relationship with her own daughter when she was pregnant with this young man, and so it didn't get a chance to get her demonic hooks into a proper male host, and therefore had no choice but to give Payman a female, and give him the wrong kind of host, and then they had to work towards getting him into a male body. We maybe should do a little bit of a linear summary, because I feel like anyone who hasn't seen this, this is batshit. Even when you're watching it in order, it's batshit.
The beginning, she talks about, I think it was when she was at the Lost meetup group, where she says that her mother was not allowed to be around Peter because she was still not ill. She was still messed up, so she was never allowed to be around Peter to manipulate Peter. But then when she got ill, her mom felt bad for her, and moved her in, and that's when she had Charlie. And she basically like gave Charlie almost to her mother, because her mother was crazy about Charlie, quote unquote. And I'm assuming that Charlie did made with what she had, and ended up just trying to summon him in her versus Peter. But Charlie's body wasn't, she had this allergy, so she was susceptible to like death. So they were like, all right, this is like a temporary solution until we can get our claws on another boy. Which then makes me wonder, Joan, she said her sons and grandson drowned, and I'm wondering if they were somehow a target. Plus, her son, Queen Lee's son died, and he said before he died, she was trying to put people into him. Yeah, so she had clearly tried this before, and it wasn't working. So I guess she got her claws on Charlie and tried it, and and it succeeded, but it was a tainted host because of this allergy. And so it was
because they said a female host was inappropriate for this demon. So,
So it was a flawed female host. It needs to be male. Plus, she had this issue with the allergies. So they were, as soon as they got hatched a plan to go after Peter, I'm assuming that's why, even after death, she was, had this team of people trying to infiltrate Peter. So that's my whole riff on it.
And something else that was kind of cool, Annie is, she's an artist, and she does a lot of miniature creations. And one of the miniatures that she did was one of her holding Charlie, but it showed the miniature of her mom with the breast out, like she wanted to breastfeed it. Did y'all see that? That was pretty, you look back and you're like, it's interesting. I can see how that could be therapeutic to her. Right. Because I guess, you know what, let's kind of dive into one of the more shocking moments in this. Now, were any of you expecting Charlie to like go out?
No. I screamed, what the fuck, in the theater. I was shocked. I was I was in my seat with my legs up around me and my sweatshirt like around my face with just my eyes peeking out. Like I was horrified and in shock. I was in shock. Like I was like living Peter's moment, and that's when I know a movie has fucking got me. Like when I'm sitting there and living his shock, like that was so crazy to me. And then the rest of the movie, it's one what the fuck moment after the next. And when they showed the head with the ants all over it,
that was it.
Well, I died.
You had to, and you've got to give the movie props on that now. I know.
I did. I actually acted what you would call extra in the theater. So our theater was silent. Nobody was having it with this movie. And so you could have heard a pin drop. So at the moment when she actually, so just for a backstory so that people know what we're talking about, Charlie goes into anaphylactic shock, which is what we mentioned with her being allergic to peanuts. Her brother is made to take her to this party that he doesn't want. Neither one of them wants to have her at. And her big weakness is chocolate. And so he's like, a girl, of course, invites him to go upstairs and smoke weed. And he's just like, yeah. So he has to get rid of his little sister. So he's like, here, go have a piece of chocolate cake. So, of course, the chocolate cake has nuts in it. And cut to, he's trying to rush her to the hospital. This movie was also, to me, an exercise in like, if you had just done one simple thing, things would have turned out so different. If you had actually called a paramedics like to come to the house, none of this would have occurred.
Yeah, of course, that's a number one thing when you learn. Like when my son had his first asthma attack, I took him to the urgent care really quick, just so that the whole driving him to the hospital was just killing me, because they won't. So he was having an asthma attack, and the urgent care couldn't get a handle on it, and we didn't know what it was because it wasn't a normal asthma attack like you would think is an asthma attack. And they wouldn't let us drive him to the emergency room. He had to go by ambulance, and they said 80% of asthma deaths are when parents put their kid in the car on the way to the hospital. They die 80%. And it's the same thing with any kind of allergy. So if you don't call 911 when somebody goes into shock or goes into attack, they most likely will die in your car on the way there.
Because
so that's
the thing is, you're not getting air.
No,
so PSA, people, air is very fucking important to survival. and so he puts this little girl who can't breathe whatsoever into the backseat of his car, and he's driving through rural Utah, so we assume it's kind of a long drive, and he's not a cop. He doesn't have lights and sirens. And, of course, there's a deer in the road. He swerves to avoid it, meanwhile, his sister has stuck her head out to try to get air, and she hits a tree or a telephone pole. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a phone pole.
It was a pole with the same symbol that, the grandmother had at the beginning of the
noise that her head makes as it hits that thing. That's what made me jump, and that's what made me cover my mouth because, again, the theater I was in stayed completely silent, but I actually screamed into my hand at that moment. So I will give you that I was not expecting.
Well, for me, like as far as horror movies are concerned, if we're talking about iconic shots, for me, that head is like almost shoots to the top of my list of shit.
Oh, totally. I agree with you. I agree with
you.
You
know, like I'll never forget that ever.
God.
It was pretty brutal.
I mean, you don't know. I mean, you know something's happened, and I'm thinking, did it like knock her out of the car? Like I wasn't expecting a headless. Like and then like the mother finding it, like you can hear her screams while you see Peter laying in his bed in shock. And can you fucking imagine finding your child without its head in the backseat of your car? Like you just have to put me in a fucking padded room. I mean, there's no way.
Yeah, but the description that she was giving later on in the movie about what she saw, which was one of the, which was another great scene. That Toni Collette was in, where she just really pulled it off. But what we learn essentially throughout the movie, we've already mentioned that essentially the demon thrives, in a male host. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that they did throughout this movie, what we learn later on is, I called it the softening of Peter Graham, because all of the with the death of his sister and what happened, the bad decisions he made with that, along with feeling more and more isolated with the things that are going on at the house. And he's young, so he really doesn't know he doesn't really have any coping mechanisms for everything. Right. So one of the things that this demon was doing, and the cultists or whatever, was basically putting Peter in a situation where it made his body vulnerable enough to be able to accept, the demon going in it. So this is why, and I thought that Alex Wolff, I thought that he just did a good job. When I was watching the trailers, I was like, that's a character I'm probably not gonna like, And then when I watched it, just as far as him giving what he had from an emotional point, it just made more sense to me. Like, man, all of this stuff and all of the things that this kid was feeling, and it was all literally like on purpose. Like it was like a game being played with him. So I thought that was great.
I thought he was amazing. I mean, like, I felt for that kid like every step of the way. I mean, when he bangs his head on the desk and he's like horrified in himself, and when he looks in that reflection and his mouth is smiling, and at the end, just the sheer he's trying to wake himself up. He can't believe all of these things are happening. And like the horror on his face when his mom is like cutting off her own head. I mean, and then you can see his transition into Paimon, or whatever the hell you say his name. He acts exactly, he's got the same facial expression as his sisters did, like as his sister did, with like the weird head tilt and the almost like bird type. I don't even know how to explain it. Just real kind of like head to the side, this kind of weird blank stare that she had and then he's got it. And so now he's in Peter now, and it was just, God, I thought he was amazing. And I was with you when I first saw him in the movie. I was like, oh, this kid's a little. He's just had this, I don't know, this look on his face that I was like, ugh, and I wasn't liking him. But then by the end of the movie, I was just like, oh my God, can you imagine as a kid seeing and witnessing all this crazy shit? Like, I can't even freaking, his dad's burned corpse in the middle of the living room. I mean, oh my God.
Well, I don't know, Moni. Dive in. I'm ready for you to start roasting some of these characters, Moni. So, I mean, overall, what'd you think about Alex Wolff's portrayal of Peter Graham?
He did a great job, and I'm not generally going to knock a younger actor like that. You know, that was a big film to carry. That was a lot of psychological stuff, but here we go. So first of all, Ann Dowd is in it, and she's always amazing. She plays a friend who meets Toni Collette's character at a grief therapy group, and actually doesn't just meet, but like is aggressive in becoming friends with her. So right off the bat, so first of all, I'm still watching, as I keep mentioning, The Handmaid's Tale, and Ann Dowd has a big role in that as Aunt Lydia. Aunt Lydia is no damn good. And the minute that I saw Ann Dowd, and she's kind of trying to be really aggressive about making Toni Collette like come out to her and you know, for them to go through their grief together and to show her how to do a seance, I was like, Aunt Lydia's no damn good. You can't trust Aunt Lydia. So I was totally unsurprised when it comes to the fact that Aunt Lydia, or Ann Dowd's character, is actually, you know, trying to help basically her deceased mother bring this demon into the family. Like, I was just like, yeah, that's something that Aunt Lydia would do. So there wasn't a lot of like, as soon as they read that thing in the journal, or no, Toni Collette was going through towards the beginning, a box of her mother's old things, and finds a letter to her daughter from the grandmother saying, you know, our sacrifices are big, but they will be rewarded. I was like, yeah, the girl's going to die. Like, I kind of had a feeling, I didn't know it was going to happen the way that it did. That did shock me. But when she started going into shock, you know, from having the nuts, I was like, yep, she's going to die, because that's the only big sacrifice that, you know, by then it was kind of clear that grandma was working on some shit from the other side to mess this family up. And I was like, that's the only way that they can get free and do whatever they want, basically, is from death. So there was a few things that were somewhat predictable to me, that I then, because this had such a high score and because everyone seemed to love this movie, I expected it to pay off. And I'm sorry, like, psychological, yeah, there were some creepy moments, but my husband nailed it right on the head, because he didn't enjoy it either. We saw it together, and he said everything wants to be psychological horror like The Shining. But the thing with The Shining is they both had the psychological aspects, and they fucking did something. Like, you know, you actually had dad chasing the family around with a knife and an axe at the end of the film. I mean, you have both elements where it's like building, and then crazy stuff happens. And I felt like in this movie, it just sort of, with the exception of heads popping off, nothing ever really happened except for loud music and.
But I don't.
Totally
but
disagree.
I don't. Well, here's the thing. Within the context of what they're doing, trying to bring a demon back, they had to do it the way that they did it, though. Like, you couldn't turn this. You know, I mean, you see what I'm saying? Like, I don't. There's no way to necessarily have something out to get them when that something isn't where.
Peter could have been the one that cut his mom's head off instead of her doing it herself.
Oh, you know what? I don't even think. You know what?
I think it's more horrifying when she's horrified. The look on her face is like, I'm doing this, and it's in front of my son, and she can't control it. That was horrifying to me. Like, holy shit.
That he thinks that's what he saw. I think in reality, those cultists cut her head off. I think that's what he thinks he saw. Because remember, there were other people that were up there, you know. You know what I mean? I think I just, for some reason, I don't think that she cut her head off. I think that's what he thinks happened.
Well, I'll tell you, the guy that made the movies, he built the movie around that scene.
Interesting, because I was like, but it
sawing
was
off her own head.
It's a great scene. I have to admit, I really loved it. But I thought that maybe, like, I was like, because what the fuck were the cultists doing? Or am I just tripping? Because I was I have to admit, you know, I was roasted a little bit. You know, I was up there. It was early in the morning, you know what I'm saying? Drink a little something. Yeah. So I'm nice. It's brunch. So I'm watching this movie, but I could have sworn that there was like 5 other cultists, right?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were just
What were
standing
they
there
doing?
naked in the background.
Oh,
Just
they were the ones that were okay. So they were the ones that were smiling
they
at
were
Peter down the stretch because
yeah.
they knew that the demon was in him. Okay.
Yeah, and they were also like they got the queen's body out, chopped her head off, and laid. You remember they lay them down to
Yeah.
where they're bowing. But real quick, I just want to say, here's his comments about he says the first images that came to me before writing were Charlie's head being knocked off by the telephone pole and Annie levitating while sawing off her own head. He said he built the movie around that. That's exactly how he started writing this whole movie. He didn't even know that there was going to be like what the demon was going to be or how any of that is. And if you go into like, there's a Reddit, and if anybody wants to go read it, an AMA on him, where he answers a lot of questions. But that was literally where he began the whole concept of this movie and I thought it was horrifying. I thought it was shocking.
So those
Somebody
two
else
images
cutting.
lead you to believe that something really happened in this movie. But when you think about, so one of the things is Toni Collette's character Annie, she makes miniatures, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the point of that? Like, did you expect that to come to more? Because in the end, nothing came of that.
I mean, a lot of people do that. And I think hers was more for art, but I think it was more about being a voyeur into her own life. Like most of her, all of her shit was based on her own life. And I think it was just basically a symbol of her not being in control of her life. Like this was the way she controls her life. And I think she's known since a child that her life was already predetermined by her mother. And that's why her mother wasn't, I have a fucked up mom, nothing like this, but you always search for the way to take control back in your life. And I think for her, that was her way of doing that. It's like therapeutic, and you almost feel sometimes when you had a really fucked up childhood, you almost feel like that in your life. Like you're just an outside viewer at times. And I think that's kind of what they were putting that out there like that at times.
Well, let's talk about, because I kind of had highlights written down. So something I think that we definitely need to talk about was the dinner scene. And, the airing of grievances during Festivus, Annie really started going in on Peter. And I'm going to be honest with you. I was kind of on her side. She made some good points.
Yeah.
But I thought that what Peter did were essentially, Annie was mad that Peter wasn't really, he never said that he was sorry. He never really, he kind of, and this goes to coping mechanisms. Some people aren't like that. They just don't really know how to present to another person that they're in pain as well. Yeah. But that kind of had Annie really, really pissed off. But I think the thing that Peter had said after she said all those hurtful things towards him, was when he said, hey, she didn't want to go to begin with. You trying to kind of make my hot tub cold by sending my little sister with me when she didn't even want to go, none of this would have happened had you not been petty, and done that. So I thought that was kind of, he kind of, stuck the dagger in a little bit there. But that was one of the best scenes to me in the whole movie. And poor Steve, the dad.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? He was just like, I just don't even know. You know what I'm saying? So, but what did y'all think about Gabrielle Barron, who played Steve Graham, the father? I mean, because he was in Usual Suspects, Vikings, Excalibur. Did you guys think that for what material they gave him in the movie, did you think it worked? Did you think it belonged?
I feel like the title of this film should have been Poor Steve. Like, honestly, everyone had their shit, but everyone, like, kind of did at least something to deserve it. And all he did was, he was there. He was there trying to support his wife. He was there trying to help his family get through the death of their grandmother. He was there supporting his wife again and his son when his own child passed away. And all he got for it was just continued, like, family strife, his wife starting to lose it. Like, it just was all downhill. And I hated that the trailers and even the still photo on Hereditary on IMDb has him on fire, because
Yeah.
that was part of what brought me out of the film a little bit. Was I was just waiting for the moment. I was like, how does he end up catching on fire? And so then when they get to the point where Toni Collette's trying to burn that book, and I'm like, oh, that's where Steve's gonna end up on fire. So that was kind of sad. That's just my commentary on, filmmakers, the way they do trailers and stuff, is they put, honestly, a lot of the good stuff or pivotal plot points in the trailers so that you're just waiting for that to happen.
I thought he did a good job. He was the guy that, well, first of all, a lot of the main characters are kids, so I just don't even factor them in the story as far as like what they were given or not given. I mean, at the end of the day, every single person in this film is a pawn of the mother who died. So it was a basic, like, who, I thought they were all victims. I think everybody was, Toni, her character was fucked up because of her childhood, and I think she's trying to play it as sane as possible, but when you've had that kind of upbringing, how, there's times things are going to get crazy. The kids, I don't think they did anything wrong to deserve what they got either. I think everybody was just a victim of circumstance through the whole thing, based on, Queen Anne and her minions setting up the doorway for this demon to come in. So I thought the poor guy, I mean, his wife's breaking down and losing her shit before his eyes. And again, like Moni said, they're dealing with the death of a child, and their son is starting to freak out. And, because we haven't talked about it, but she summons this demon on accident, thinking that she's trying to communicate with her daughter. And it's crazy. I mean, that then it starts to focus on him, of course, because he's going after him. And she basically just like opened the door and was like, come on, you can have him, not knowing that. And so he's in the middle of all this trying to be the sane one, and finally comes out and approaches her and's like, you're sick, you need help, and she's finally figured it all out. But because she's so out of her fucking gourd and manic, he doesn't, of course, believe her. It's not something you would just believe if somebody came to you about this. And he's like, no, I'm not playing your games anymore. Because he participated in the summoning, even though he didn't want to, because she was begging him. And so the guy, yeah, I mean, I felt bad for him, but I felt bad for everybody. I didn't see anybody really deserving the outcome that they'd had. I mean, I can not really understand what's Toni Collette's character's name again? I can't remember it now, but Annie? But yeah, so it was like, I can't really understand her actions because I've never been in that circumstance, but I can certainly understand how you try to move forward after having a really fucked up childhood. And then your mom fucking with you from the fucking grave. I mean, that sucks. I really felt bad for all of them. I thought he did an amazing job. I loved him in Usual Suspects. So yeah, I was happy to see him. I haven't seen him in a while because I'm so behind on Vikings. But I thought he was amazing. Thought he did great.
Okay, well, I had to ditch Vikings. It started getting whack.
Was it? Oh.
After a while, at least for me. But let's talk about symbolism a little bit. In the movie, there are a couple of different symbols. I don't even know what to make of it. It almost looks like, I think the grandmother had a necklace of it on at the beginning, correct? When she was in the casket.
Yeah, the matching one, yeah.
So throughout this whole movie in different locations, there's this specific occult symbol. So the grandmother had it. The pole that knocked off Charlie's head, it was on that pole. We see it written on the wall. So it was kind of showing that this cult existed, wherever
Right.
it is, because it was all over. But there were certain things that were written on the walls throughout the house as we were going on. The words Satiny, Lift Coach, Pandemonium, and Zaza. So Satiny is Satan. Lift Coach is Hebrew for open. Pandemonium, we already know what that means. Just everything's out of control. But it's also the capital of hell from apparently this book called Paradise Lost. And Zaza is the name of a demon that is conjured through the use of a Ouija board. So that's what those words were that were written, you know. I guess in the movie they're like, well, you know, people are going to have to do some research because they're not going to know. But I think the Satan ones, I think we all kind of, there were certain words that you could probably look at and associate with the occult, and looking back, they were kind of giving you signs that this was going on. So I thought that was kind of cool how they started kind of, you know, revealing those things a little bit more down the stretch. But I mean, is there anything do you have any other things that you didn't really like about the movie, Moni, that you want to air your grievances?
I mean, it was well over 2 hours, and I felt like there was a lot of buildup, and the buildup was exciting, and I just, like others have said about the ending, I didn't feel like it worked for me. I don't know what could have worked better. I just know, and to clarify also, I didn't think that the characters deserved what they got. I just mean they all had a piece in it, though. I mean, Toni Collette, messed up or not, was not a perfect mother, and you know, her daughter was like, I want grandma, and was not a perfect daughter. And I mean, not that anyone's perfect. I'm just saying that, like, Steve was the only one that, as we were watching the film, that I never was like, okay, he did this thing, and so we can kind of see why some of this backlash would come upon him. His was just like, I'm just trying to support everybody best I know how, and now I'm on fire. Like, you know?
Oh my gosh, I totally wish that Steve could have somehow survive this, you know what I mean?
No.
Can we just have one person get away? Because when the character of Annie was crying after Charlie died, when she was slumped over in the bedroom, that was kind of hard to watch, because she was
he's just trying to support his wife, and that's it. It's just she's lost in her grief, and you can't blame her, but he's like keeping his shit together for her and for his, you know, son, and it's just like he really did nothing to even like warrant any of this stuff or put it into play any of the things that ended up happening to him. So I just, poor guy.
Oh my god. You know what I mean? This is not the movie to watch on Father's Day.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. I was in my head, I'm thinking of something else, and then but I thought that this was an awesome description of the movie, and this really does sum it up for me. It says, if The Shining, The Exorcist had a baby, and The Conjuring and The Witch also had a baby, and then both of those babies somehow met, and another more fucked up baby was born, Hereditary would be that baby. And it says, Hereditary is 140 minutes of escalating dread and horror, and I absolutely loved it. And that is also, Toni Collette is fucking incredible. That is basically, yes, like, he said it better than I could have ever said it. Like, the ending, I was kind of like, okay. But everything up to that was so amazing to me that did not bother me at all, because it was just, from the second that head dropped off, it was just, what the fuck is going on? And it was, I love that. I love that just, I mean, things that, there is no other type of genre in horror. This is kind of you just don't see movies like that, like this. You just don't. It's always cheap scares, and I want fucked up stuff. I want bizarre, get in your head. And boy, did this get in my head. Like, I was floored.
I think for me, Christy and Moni, when I watch this, like, now that it's over and I look back, I think for me it was just, I really enjoyed, now that I know why this young man had to go through so much trauma. He just had to be vulnerable for the demon. But everything that that Peter went through and the whole thing, you know, it just makes it that much more, you know, sad that that young man had to just pretty much go through the worst, you know, to make himself ripe for this demon. And a person who, based off of the trailer, I didn't think I was going to like, I end up having a lot more respect for this young man as an actor. And I'll probably just, you know, kind of try to peek in to see what he has going on next. But I thought that really worked. And once again, we've already sung the praises, but the unsung hero, of course, is the dad.
Pouring
Poor
out for the
guy.
homie for sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
poor guy, Steve, he didn't really have a chance, but I'll have to say that. And everything that they did with the character of Charlie, played by, once again, Millie Shapiro, I'm curious to see if this opens up other opportunities for her. But as well, I thought that she did great with the material that she was given, and the fact that now that we know that poor girl was possessed,
Yeah.
um, it just made it, it just makes it a little bit more weird. So this is
Did,
another movie I would love to watch again.
oh, I'll see it
Yeah.
again. I'll definitely see it again. I want to go see it in the movie again. The movies. Like, I want to go to the movies to watch it again. I want to take my kid because he loves scary movies. This one will really mess with him. I can't wait.
So,
Like, you want to
just
see
good
something
parenting
really
right
fucked up. Hey, did you guys catch this at the end? Talk about, this was hysterical because we were in a pretty full theater, and the very, very end of the movie, after the credits, there's a cluck, and everybody like screamed. We were all getting our stuff, and some people were chit chatting, and you hear this really loud click, and the girls were like, ah!
That's funny.
Like, if I hear that shit,
I
I will crap
tried.
myself.
I tried to wait to the end because I was like, I wonder if it's going to do something. But at that point, I was just like, I don't know if I can make it. I don't know if I can make it to the end of the credits. I don't know. And then
Yeah.
the click must have happened once I was like out of the door. But I thought it was something. So I think that was probably pretty cool. I guess if you were
It
in a
was
theater
because you
full of
just weren't
people.
expecting it, you know. So everybody's
Well,
like, "Well, that
so
was fucked up," and then you hear that again, and you're like, "Oh, fuck," you know.
well, let's go ahead and give our rating. So on a score of 1 to 5, we'll start with you, Moni. How do you grade Hereditary?
So to summarize my feelings about it, it is an interesting character study that, by the way, happens to involve demons. Like, I wasn't scared. I went into this thinking I was going to be scared to death, and I know y'all feel different, and that's fine, but I wasn't, I was like interested. So, you know, the story of this family and the dark secrets that they have were very interesting and messed up, but then when it sort of took a turn into straight horrorsville at the end, I was like, yeah. So, I mean, based on the wonderful performances, the decently written, like the decent story that it had to it and that kind of thing, I would give it a 3. But if you're looking for something, at least in my opinion, to scare the shit out of you, this is not the movie. So that's why, just because it is obviously marketed as a horror film and horrifying things do happen to this family throughout what I feel like is the playing out of a drama, yeah, it's got some psychological aspects there, but it has a solid 3 in my opinion.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, we were
Oh,
hoping
there
that you
he
was
is.
gonna jump right on in.
me. Sorry, I didn't know.
I'll go last.
I'm like, is anybody there? What's happening? And do not cluck in those silences. I will jump and piss myself. I thought it was amazing. I give it a 5, and I think that there's a horror type genre for everybody. This is my genre. I don't want slicer. I don't want crazy murderous people on the rampage killing everybody. I want build up crazy mind fucking demon everything. It checked all my boxes. I was like holding my breath and trying not to cry with Peter walking in, just walking in the house and laying there, and you just see him in absolute shock. And, where Steve was holding Annie while she was sobbing, while Peter was listening outside the hall. To me, that's horrifying. Like, what they're witnessing, I was there. It was like this, they just did such a good job with pulling you in for me. And it horrified me. It was horrifying to me. Like, Jason and, all those crazy mass murder, killer movies don't scare me. They're, like, dumb to me. I just don't get. But when somebody pulls you in and into this mind fucking crazy, that's what I like. That's what I want to see. So I give it a freaking 5. It's probably now one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Seriously. Like, I loved it.
Okay. Well, for me, I've got it up there pretty high as well. I'm going to give it a 4.5, and mainly because I don't get scared in movies. Like I just don't. That's just not something that's possible. So things like this that are more suspenseful and it's kind of a slow burn are things that are more of my alley. So going in, I was, watching the trailers. I was basically thinking that this is a movie that's probably going to be disturbing. And I went in expecting to be disturbed, not necessarily scared. And that's pretty much what I got. I mean, I think that the grind that it went on was also supposed to be reflective of all of these things that are happening to all of these characters. All of these bad things keep happening back to back to back. And then you find out at the end of the day, a lot of this madness and a lot of this chaos were things that were needed for this cult to bring back this demon. And I thought that it was cool and I thought that it worked, but mainly because I was really impressed with what the younger generation were doing. I thought the young kids, Alex Wolf and Millie Shapiro, I thought that they did a great job, and I'm actually interested and kind of invested in them hopefully getting more work because they did a great job, and it actually makes me want to go online to see if I can see her theater work.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I mean, she seems like she's going to be a solid actress going forward. Now, granted, she didn't have a lot of. I don't think she had a lot of dialogue, but I think by the way she looked, the way that she moved, and what little bit of dialogue that she got, I thought that she knocked it out of the park.
She
So.
sold it.
So it's definitely one of my favorite horror movies.
I gotta say, I'm sorry. There's really one part that we didn't talk about in the movie that really freaked me the fuck out, and that was when Annie was banging her head on the attic door when Peter locked himself in the attic, and she was like she was like upside down on the attic door, like bashing her head in the door. That
I was
freaked
giggling.
That freaked me the fuck out. That was, because clearly now the demon's in her body and she's doing all this shit that she doesn't want to do. But I just was like, and we didn't even talk about like the buildup of whenever she was sleepwalking and she woke up and she had her kids in gasoline and was about to like burn the kids and herself, and he's like, "You tried to kill me," and she's like, "I was trying to save you," and in some weird way, subconscious way, she was trying to kill them before all this crazy shit happened, even though she didn't know it was going to happen. So he was already afraid of his mother, and then you've got her going after him, and he's having to lock himself in the attic with his big headless dead grandmother up there, and she's banging her fucking head. That freaked me the fuck out. Like, I get chills talking about it. I was like, holy shit, this kid.
Is that where you dart off to, Moni? Do you go up in the attic or you just haul ass out the house?
Out of the house. Like, what was it, like back in the time of Scream, where I think they made Scary Movie, they said where you're supposed to run out of the house instead of up the stairs to where you're more trapped, and like, just the things that people do wrong in horror movies. And again, you're not thinking straight if you're in his mode, but as a viewer, I was giggling so many times when it wasn't supposed to be funny, and I wasn't alone in the theater in doing that, because I was just like, oh, when I saw her, because we've seen the ceiling thing before. Horror movie fans have seen, maybe not the banging on the door with her head, but like, as soon as I saw her float over, I was giggling. I was just like,
"Oh, that freaked me out."
They're doing this
because I didn't see her. I didn't see her on the wall for the longest time, and then the shadow caught my eye, and I was like, "Whoa, that's her!" And then she starts floating, and I'm like, "And you totally soundless." Now I know
they have her float was just like, she's wearing a white, outfit, obviously, and so it just looks like they took a bunch of tissues and tied them to a wire, and it just like floated across, and I was like, look at her go! Like, I don't know, it just took me out of it.
I was like in Peter's mind by that time. So I was sitting there with Peter. You have no idea your mother is behind you, possessed by a demon. And the kid just woke up from a horrifying experience from school where he bashed his face on the desk. Yeah, he has no idea what's going on. He's on drugs from he's probably got pain pills and shit all in his system, and he has no idea what's going on. And for that to happen, and then he goes up in the attic because he has no idea his dad is a freaking barbecue, downstairs on the floor. I mean, I'm thinking, oh my God, poor kid's gone through enough, and now he's waking up to like the worst nightmare of his life, like that you couldn't even comprehend in your mind, And that's when he goes up there and he's like, I'm asleep. Like, wouldn't you think that? Like, wake up, Peter, wake up. I was like, oh my God, if only you were asleep. Like, it was, I was horrified.
That was what made me laugh so much, was I was just like, it's so much, like everything they've gone through is just, this whole thing is extra, and I'm being extra about it. And I clearly didn't have the empathy that the film was trying to get me to have at that point for these characters, because I was just like, why? Like, oh, of course she's floating on the ceiling. Of course there's a headless person in that. Of course your dad's a barbecue. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? It's all good, Moni. Like, I feel everything you're saying. I will say this. I definitely think it could have been probably 15 minutes shorter, maybe. Because there was a point where I was sitting in there and I was like, don't look at your watch, because only 45 minutes is going to have gone by when it had seemed like it'd been on for a while. Then I looked at my watch and then it was like another hour left. But things started picking up steam a little bit, in the third act. So, but like I said, this one's it's a grinder, but for me, it worked. Like, I didn't really feel like I was bored, though. Even though it was 2.5 hours, I didn't really feel bored, because I always felt like that they were doing something, and they would always have something like, her in therapy, and then she'll talk about all the fucked up stuff that had in her life, and then that makes you feel a certain kind of way, and then and
then a kid's head falls off.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And then they'll follow that up with, oh my God, she just told, she's like in this therapy, about losing her mom. And then the next thing boom, her kid's dying. And then she heads back to therapy and then chickens out and then meets, Joan. And it's just, it's just funny.
Whenever I saw the end of the movie, I was like, oh, good, it's not over yet, because it can't have been 2 hours yet. And I was thinking there's going to be more, like, at the very end, whenever he's standing there. Clearly now he's Paimon. Like, I'm thinking something else is going to happen. To me, it went by so fast, I was like, no way has it been 2 hours. And then the credits came, and I was like, oh, I guess it's been 2 hours. That's how, like, wrapped up in the movie I was. I didn't even notice how long I had been sitting there.
And look,
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and to the listeners who think that we're going all over the place, that's the way the movie is. It's going to seem like that for you for a while. But go ahead, Moni. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I had to pee, like, somewhere towards the beginning of the film, and I didn't want to get up because the movie was such a slow burn that I was like, something is going to happen, and then I'll miss it. And with the exception of her head popping off, I just felt like I spent a whole 2 hours and 7 minutes waiting for something to happen that never quite did. And I know that maybe is illogical to those who are frightened by this film, but it just is the way that I felt, that I was like, I could have gone pee at any point and I really wouldn't have missed anything.
That's true. No, you totally could have, because for me, I actually, you want me to tell you how I know this is good, is I actually went through this whole thing and I didn't have to pee. Like, I didn't even think, and I drank, it was like 10:45 my show in AM, and I was already up, like, drinking a little bit. I was like, okay, it's my day off. I'm gonna get a little toasty, go up here and watch this thing, and go grab something to eat afterwards. Didn't pee once, so it had me sucked in, and I'm surprised. I'm surprised because I didn't expect it.
I was usually, when I go to the movie theater, I'll get wine, but I was like, okay, I know this movie's long, so I'm not going to drink any wine because I will have to pee, within 2 hours after, while I'm drinking wine. So I got a big ass Diet Coke instead, because that's not any different. And I did realize I had to pee after the movie when I stood up, but the whole time I drank that whole thing and I was just fine. Like, I would know, it didn't even come into my brain about peeing at all. Like, I was so wrapped up into it. Like, so Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. Like, everybody's got different horror movie genres that they like. This is what I like. This is what I'm always looking for when I watch a horror movie. Always.
Maybe
Like,
maybe we should title it movies where old people don't even have to get up to piss on. You know what I mean?
exactly.
They're
It's
that
so
dope.
good, you won't want to pee.
I know.
Never
So,
again, because you have to get up at night if you're scared. So
but
God.
okay, but
Yeah.
I think actually I'm encouraged though. I mean, because Moni gave it a right down the middle thing, so it's one of those things where she was like, it's suitable, but
yeah,
you know,
it's
make
better
sure
than
you're
average because it's,
yeah.
it's so well acted and stuff. But and the odds are, I mean, obviously, at least half of general audiences think it's scary. So the odds are you will be scared. And I'm not going to lie and say that certain aspects didn't kind of stick with me a little bit, but I'm that way. Like, I could watch the dumbest of horror films that doesn't scare me and makes me yawn and I fall asleep. But then, like, as soon as I turn out the lights at night and I'm kind of on my own because everyone else will be asleep, then I'll be like, I think I see something in the chair. That's stupid. That's being stupid. I thought I heard a click. What was that sound? Like, that's just how I am. So I'm not going to lie and say that, the house settling noises that night, I didn't imagine that there was a click in there somewhere. But then I just laughed because I was like, but that's so stupid. The movie was so dumb. So, that was just my opinion on it. But it's worth a watch, I think. I do think that if you have, 2 hours and 15 minutes to waste, to spend watching a film, by all means, watch this one.
Okay, now we've got to talk about next week. So Christy, I think it's your time. So tell us what direction we're going.
Well, I'm excited because we're having our first guest on. Her name's Kim, and she's from the podcast People Are Wild. And basically, her entire podcast is kind of a medical fucked up stories podcast. It's really interesting to listen to. If you guys are looking for other podcasts to check out, definitely want to check hers out. She's going to come on and talk about the top 5 most fucked up medical cases she's ever worked. Nice. And when I asked her to do that, she's like, just 5? So, I mean, we might get more than that, just depending on what, each story we'll probably discuss a little bit and have some questions. So if we have time for more, I told her, get as many as you want, and then we can always segue into some extra ones if the show allows the time for it. So I'm super excited. Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm also intrigued at how many of those medical stories will sort of intersect with some of the stuff that's happened medically to human bodies at the library. So this should be an interesting discussion.
Also, when we talked about our zombie apocalypse plans, she's the one that has the med van that is going to come down from up north and caravan with me down to our private island that we're going to take out with a bridge with dynamite on. So it's funny, after we had that conversation on zombie plans and zombie preparedness, that's what created the conversation for her to come on the show. So nice. Thanks, Moni, for hooking me up.
Oh, okay. Well, it sounds like that's going to be fun, and I look forward to the show. And it's funny, every time I look up and I see that we're in the 30s, and pretty soon we're going to be in the 40s of doing episodes. I'm always amazed because this has actually turned out to be a lot more fun than I thought, and we still have a lot more stuff. Because as time goes on, because I think we're definitely in a kind of a golden age of like movies and television where there's so many different options, and you can get on Netflix and literally look for something to watch for an hour and then fall asleep and not end up watching anything because you've got so many options. Mm-hmm. So I definitely look forward to the show next week. And you know what? As long as this thing keeps being fun, I'm going to be happy being with you two ladies doing it.
Well, we're glad you're here.
Same. I'm enjoying this a lot, and I think we're finally starting to hit our stride, and knocking some of the dust off, and it's good. And I do want to wish all the creepers a happy belated at the time that you listen to this Father's Day. As Christy mentioned, that's what we're recording on today. So I hope that you treated the father figure in your life very well, or at least gave him a call today. I'm gonna go have my girls go call my dad right now. So. And, of course, spoil my husband. Of course, we got to hook him up. It's already been done. He's got concert tickets it's not till September, but they were expensive. So that's his first present so far. And I actually made breakfast.
To what?
We're going to go see Rise Against an AFI at in this old place in Irvine that is kind of nostalgic for us from our dating days. So I think it's going to be fun. But also, I'm wifing today. I actually made breakfast and things like that. So you got to know you're special when I actually do wife things. So I hope that you all made your Father's Days just as special as I'm trying to do for the daddy in my house.
Oh, that's what's up. That's what's up. Well, I guess we'll just go ahead and close this thing out, and I hope everybody tunes back in next week. It's going to be a fun show, and I always look forward to when Christy has her hand on the wheel. So with that being said, we bid you a bye.
Creep it real, y'all.